Thanks for joining us as we take a closer look at The War of the Worlds, the 2005 version, otherwise known as...
If you see a bad alien, don't run, sneeze on him.
You know what? Maybe it would have been... I looked for how it should have ended on this, and
it's a little old.
Yeah, well, 2005. I don't know if how it should have ended was really doing anything at that time.
Don't know.
But they did not have it. I was a little disappointed. Also, I wanted to say that we're doing a lot of this reasons because we want to be able to take a look at culture, be able to grab a hold of culture and basically use it for godly purposes. Now, there's a short story that I have out. It's called A Taste of Earth. And this came out earlier this month. And I want to thank you, those who have picked it up and left reviews on it, especially those who just purchased it. The reviews are most appreciated. It's now in the top 20 of a couple of its categories, and you have helped make it the success. We're changing culture, telling stories that challenge the narrative one story at a time. Now, this story had similarities to War of the Worlds, and tomorrow I'm going to be bringing is going to be a cover reveal for the next short story that's coming out August 1st. We're doing a short story beginning of each month. So August is coming out, and that is Death Has No Shadow, and it brushes up against a question, and that is, what is a soul? What does it mean to be human? So all these things, we're using pop culture to share the good news, and we're going to do that tonight with War of the Worlds. Is there a deeper message here? I saw some things, but I want to know what you see, and so that's why we're doing this as an after party. Why War of the Worlds? Well, it was a viewer choice award.
You guys chose it.
Yes.
Well, at least at one point.
At one point,
and
you
then
did.
Didn't.
And then it did. That's right. So War of the Worlds was on top, but we did this poll and said, which ones do you guys want to review in an after party? And War of the Worlds was by far on top. And this is last week. And I thought, well, I got to call this because we want to give enough time for people to review this. But as you saw, it is no longer on top. What do we have on top? Battle Los Angeles. I would not have, that would have been my last choice.
That's
put
like
that
a
on
B
there.
Level.
I guess,
okay,
but for whatever reason, that's a viewer choice.
You guys want to do it, we'll do it.
So we'll look at doing that later. We're going to look at doing Man of Steel later. I was kind of surprised. Another Tom Cruise story that was on here, another Tom Cruise movie, was Oblivion. Now, maybe people weren't familiar with it, and they just looked at the cover art of the poster for the movie there and thought, it's not something they really want to see. It's some kind of bridge. It's dark and very there's very little color to it. Maybe they didn't really know what it was. But we'll be looking at those another time. So we're soldiering forth, and we're going to be doing War of the Worlds tonight. A little history of War of the Worlds. This is it's really kind of an old story. It's one of the first science fiction stories that came about. Technically, you could say that Frankenstein is the first science fiction story in the modern era.
Sort of.
Maybe Oedipus Rex, you can go way back into the Greeks and say that was kind of because there was some sort of time travel involved in it. But War of the Worlds originally was a novel written by H.G. Wells and published in 1898. It was a seminal work in science fiction literature, the main story depicting Martian invasion of Earth. And has seen numerous adaptations across various media. The first major adaptation was Orson Welles in 1938. It was a radio broadcast which famously caused public panic, due to its realistic news bulletin format.
It was. You can actually find it on YouTube.
Now, where did you said did you listen to that?
I've listened to it right here on YouTube.
Okay.
You just type it in, War of the Worlds radio show or whatever, and it pulls it right up.
Okay.
And you can listen. It's about an hour long.
All right.
And I can definitely see why, if they would have tuned in after the introduction, if they would skip the introduction and tuned in, I could see why, because it is styled very similar to the news broadcast of the time.
That is hilarious. I mean, it's funny now, but I guess it really did cause some panic involved with this. So yeah, in 1950, so it's 1953, would have been during the Cold War era also. That may have been some of the added to some of the panic that was there. This was, and Steven Spielberg, of course, did this movie in 2005. It was the adaptation. There were some differences here. If you look at the original story and this, it really focuses a lot on the family that's involved in this story. It's one of the main things that was in here.
Yeah, that's not on the original. That's not on the radio.
No.
The radio is more generic.
Yeah. So they wanted, I think, in this adaptation, they wanted to make it more personal and not just as a straight broadcast. They wanted to. They spent a lot of time on the family.
Yeah, a lot of focus on the family. The original is definitely more, though they did keep the intro and outro, which is nice.
Yeah, that was interesting that they had, and I'm going to be reading a little bit of that later. So there was, I thought that was a nice touch that they had to it. So, spoiler-free review. Eric, on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate this movie?
I'd say probably a 6. Not very high. I mean, it's not fantastic. It's interesting. I'd say most of the saving graces. If it was a standalone, it would probably lower. But since there is a history behind it, that's more interesting. That it was actually a panic.
Yeah,
created a panic. That definitely helped boost the numbers. But and the intro and outro definitely helped boost it. But other than that, I would probably give it more like 3.
Really? 4. I would not put it that far down, because it was not okay. Never mind. I'll argue about that later. We're doing spoiler free, so we can't get into too much detail. But I would also give it a 6. I might edge it up to a 6.5. There were some shortfalls. Some of it had to do with the storytelling technique itself, and this would be. I think this. I can add this as spoiler free. This was, and you mentioned this, so I don't want to take any of your steal, but
this is probably one of the biggest problems I have with it.
Is that it will go ahead and say it,
because it's passive. The main characters are passive. These events are happening to them. They are not necessarily participating. I mean, they are trying to survive, but you don't get the hoorah moment at the end where it's like, they were victorious. They were able to overcome. No, it was like, we just had to outlast them. Okay, so we are hitting some spoiler territory. This whole thing is like spoiler.
No, we're still in spoiler-free territory. This was supposed to be. So anyway, yeah, I would agree with you. And because we crossed that Rubicon, I'm going to go ahead and put this up here. We are now in spoiler territory. So spoiler-filled theatrical review. Yeah, that was part of it that dragged it a little bit, I think, is whatever this family did would impact this family and the people that they're associated with directly during this whole escape routine, because that was primarily what it was. It was a run away from the bad guys.
Run away from the bad guys. The main characters are always on the reaction steps. They're never proactive as far as taking back or conquering or anything like that, or kicking butt.
Right. So this would be, maybe we can compare this to Independence Day that we just did a review on. And in that, the characters were active in trying to defeat the invaders.
Yeah, so in the original Independence Day, you have the main characters figure out a weakness that they could exploit. And then because of that, they were able to fight back and repel the alien invasion.
Right.
And this one, they just got sick and killed over and died.
There was an earlier version also. I didn't mention this, but I remember seeing this when I was a kid. It scared the snot out of me. I was like 5 or 6 years old. And this was an earlier version. I didn't check to see what year it came out, but it's an earlier version of this, and it had some of those spooky sounds in it. And they also died because of a virus, and I believe that was also.
I mean, it's an interesting twist.
Yes, it is.
It's an interesting twist. It's normally not what you expect, but
David and Goliath kind of story. But again, this was because it was passive. It did have a handicap in that what the characters could do was limited, but what they could do was also make a change of their own characters.
There was some change of characters, definitely in the kids.
Right.
I don't know so much.
Ray Ferrier, who was played by Tom Cruise, he did change. He was basically the selfish jerk of a dad who really was not involved with his kids. It's like, do whatever. I got to watch that. I have custody of them over this weekend. Yeah, maybe I'll help you out with your homework if I feel like it, whatever. And he's a bit of a jerk. And the kids are distant from him, especially his son, for a good reason. And we do see that change in the end. Although his son does come back to him in the end, you could say his son is a prodigal son type of character. It's really him, Tom Cruise's character, Ray, that makes the biggest change, I think.
I think so. I think in all the characters, there is the turning towards the father that the kids do. But yeah, he does the major character change.
Right.
Let's be honest, his ex-wife had the easy job. They just sat and chilled.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. That was one of those almost how it should have ended moments with it. So it is, yeah, that is quite crazy. We do have what would you say are some of the movie's strengths and some of its weak? We just talked about a major weakness, but in terms of its strengths and then any other weaknesses that you saw in the movie.
Strengths, I'd have to say, and this goes with the Christian theme that comes out of this, is just God's authority in it, that he's got this already planned out, that we don't have to be terribly concerned about even these big aliens coming down to destroy us. God had it planned out from the beginning.
Okay. You say that was a strength?
I'd say that's a strength in it. And I'd say that twist, not seeing it until it actually occurs, is also well done.
So there was a bit of, I don't know if you'd say it at the very beginning, there was something that is mentioned, and that's the son. I was looking for the daughter. Okay, so here we have Ray with his two children. Robbie is the boy and Rachel is the girl. And Rachel comes up to him at the earlier part of the movie and she says, I have a splinter dad. It's kind of an odd scene. Why in the world? It's just like a very mundane thing. Mm-hmm. You know, they pick it up. Why was that put in the movie in Spielberg directing? I believe that was a metaphor of what was to come. He was going to try to extract it.
He was going to try to fix it.
She said it's just going to come out on its own. And that's what happened to the aliens. All they really had to do was wait it out. And the problem would solve itself. It would go away.
Yeah, but in our fast-paced movie society, that doesn't work so well.
Well, I know. But it was what I'm saying. It's a precursor. This is a theme that was in there to say it's going to solve itself, right? And so that, I believe that's why that one part was in there. So what about the special effects that was involved in this movie?
I think they did a great job. The aliens were very interesting. They were very unique. They do actually show the aliens, which some movies don't. And they're interesting.
Yeah.
They're not the typical, so you got these tripods, and they'd even call them tripods in the original radio broadcasts. So that went back to the radio.
And the earlier movie, that was also the situation. It was very similar design for that as well. And even the little periscope things I just showed right here that come out, that was also in the movie. So those were all different parts of it. So from a special effects standpoint, from the chase scenes, from all of that, I think that those were well done. I think that part was well directed. When they come up, when they have the lightning at the beginning,
very interesting,
and it hits in.
Go to inside.
Yeah. So what was the point of the lightning hitting the ground?
Power transfer, and the aliens were riding the lightning into something with their technology, getting into the ships,
getting into the tripods that were there, and the tripods were buried in the earth. They've been buried for millennia.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that
They
was a
never
bit of a stretch.
explain why. I mean, you could have, in theory, or maybe be able to send these ships at super fast speeds because you don't have to worry about any organic inside it. And then the ships could, deposit these big walkers all over the place, because in the original broadcast, it was the invaders were from Mars.
Right.
And the invaders were just coming down, and the tripods were actually with them. They deployed with them hitting the Earth. It wasn't like they were hidden on the ground.
Okay.
So, in fact, it even starts off with just them shooting at each other.
Yep.
Instead of, in this one, it's just the tripods pop out of the ground. Now
that was unique, and I don't believe in the earlier version of the movie that was there either.
No.
So there was a couple of good quotes that were in here. They end up seeing this staying in the basement with this crazy guy. His name was Harlan Ogilvy, and what was he, a paramedic?
He was a paramedic,
but he was nuts.
He lost his marbles.
Yes, he did.
But then again, he did just watch his entire family get annihilated, so there is that aspect.
There, that could push him over the edge.
He did just say, he asked at one point, the main character asked him, "How did you lose anyone?" He said, "Everyone."
Oh yeah, but you know what? He's a paramedic, so you'd think that he would be close to death. Except if it's his own people, then that could be an issue.
Home family. You have lost everything. You have nothing to lose.
So there was a quote that he said. He said, "This is not a war between men and maggots. It's an extermination. This is we're so far below them technologically. We can't even scratch them. Eventually, they did. Right?
Yeah."
Eventually, they saw the birds coming in. The shields were down. Again, another thing that was very close to Independence Day. Having the shields are down. They can destroy them. But it was a different method for that. Also, in Independence Day, that was a virus.
Now,
right?
That statement, by the way, yes, it was a virus. The statement from him is very similar to what was in the original radio broadcast, if memory serves.
Oh.
It references something very similar.
So that was a quote that was in there. It may have been even a quote from the original book.
Like a war between. We wouldn't call it a war if it was a war between, humans and maggots. We call it an extermination. That was from.
Okay.
That was from the original, if memory serves.
And then you do have there's some twists in here with that and some other things. There's a lot of unexpected things. Like they're on the ferry, they think they're safe, and there's one underwater. Yeah, I would not.
I mean,
where can you go?
You're watching these things come. I would have gone around along the shoreline, because that would be the only thing I could think of to get out of that situation. You got the big walker things coming in over the mountain, and you're going to have little boats out on the water full of people. Those aren't like huge targets.
No.
I'd be if I was them, if I was the aliens, I was exterminating these bugs, and all of them got on little piece of sticks and start floating out in the ocean, I'd be like, the easy targets. Pop, pop, pop,
That's
pop,
the
pop.
thing. If I know, that they're going for groups of people. They want to target rich environments. So do not get away from any crowds. Get away from cities. Get away from crowds.
Yep.
But then you say, well, you don't have an advantage because there's strength in numbers. We couldn't do anything anyway.
Nope. You're so outmatched at that point. Nope. Scattering is the best survival tactic at that point, is to keep away from people. And at that point, people are getting desperate and they are not reliable.
So another thing that was interesting, I'm not sure how this really made a whole lot of sense, but they were using human blood as a fertilizer.
I think
to
in the
terraform?
original,
Is that
they
how it
were
was?
eating humans.
Okay.
I think originally it was eating humans, and they're talking about fattening up humans as like cattle in the original broadcast or something like that.
Okay. But this was using human blood to sort of alien form or terraform the world. Again, I'm going to put another plug in, very much like something that may or may not happen. Spoiler alert, may or may not happen with this thing. And I'm going to go ahead and
I don't remember human blood being
involved. Human blood was not involved. Okay, I did not mean that.
Okay, I just putting it out there. I mean, your story's not that gory.
No, it's not. And I need to go to comments. Okay, so I'm going to put a link out there. Sorry, I'm going to get rid of that one. Put this one out here and say, anybody want to catch that? There it is. There's the link. And also in the description, we have the link in the description there too. So there was a couple of other things that happened here. There's real points of dilemma, ethical dilemmas that happened in the movie. One of them was he goes to save his son. And again, here's a picture of the son and the daughter. The son's name is Robbie. The daughter is Rachel. And there's one point in the show where he has to choose which of them he's going to save. The son, for whatever reason, just went bonko and wants to go join the military to get his revenge on
he was being driven by revenge, wanting to go get revenge.
I think there was also an element of of feeling useless, of feeling that he wanted to make a difference. And here he could go ahead and get rid of the fight. He just didn't want to be passive. He wanted to be active.
Yeah.
But you just don't join like that. This.
You need training unless they're really desperate.
Unless they're down to the last.
If they're
man.
really desperate, then yeah, you could. They will be willing to.
So he had Tom Cruise, his character Ray, had to make the decision on who he's going to save, and that was a very difficult decision. Do you let your? He's almost, was he 18? He was very close.
He was
Still
close. It might have been 16, but he was definitely of an older section where she was much younger.
Yeah.
And at that point, you've got to prioritize the younger over the older.
I would say that there is maybe a 5-year difference between the kids. And by the way,
then he would have been 15.
Yeah.
Because her age is stated in it.
Was it?
Yes, she was supposed to be 10.
Okay. So this is Rachel, and she's played by Dakota Fanning. What a little actress! Holy cow, she was emotional. She really nailed it. Unfortunately, with a lot of child actors, they have problems later in life, and I hope is not the case for her. But she did a fantastic job.
She was very annoying. Yes.
A lot of screaming going on, but you can imagine something like this would be
very traumatic. Well, I mean, and I can understand the father's desire to try to filter out the stuff that's actually happening, but he ends up going out of his way to do that, and it just ends up not working anyway.
No. So here's another ethical question. They end up, he's no longer has his son. He's with his daughter, Rachel, and he ends up in the basement with this guy, Harlan, who is nuts. This guy has lost it, but he's right on the edge. You're not quite sure, but then he says some things that are just off the deep end.
And he definitely goes downhill. He goes nutser.
Yeah, and to the point where his daughter is threatened by this guy. So there's the ethical question of what you do there.
Remove the threat.
Remove the threat, which means
at that point you don't have much option. I mean, you got the aliens above you. He's being noisy. He's going to bring them down on us.
Right.
You have got to protect your daughter. You can't leave the area because of the aliens would obviously see you. He's not going to leave the area. He's already proven to be a threat to you, as well as just generally unstable. So sometimes you need to do what you need to do.
Yeah. That was one of the questions that were asked here for ethical. So we're going to be getting into this next section, thematic review. This is the best part of a review, and we leave it for last because we have to build it based on comments that are already made on the movie itself. This is where we ask, are there any Christian themes in the movie that we can use to deliver a message of instruction or hope to a dying world? What did you see in this movie? If so, we're asking for viewers and anybody in chat that wants to be able to bring this up. What did you see in the movie that could have been a Christian theme?
Well, there's a few. There's like I said, beforehand, where there's God being in control of everything and having it all planned out ahead of time. And then there's also the aspect of just, the question that was posed in a lot of movies, and this one particularly, is humanity inherently corrupt, or are we inherently virtuous? And the answer is, well, we're inherently corrupt in our current fallen nature.
I think there is both, right?
So there's the opportunity in general. No, in general, it showed more of the corruption, desperation, people going crazy, willing to kill to get a little ahead.
That is a good point.
Where that is true. I mean, that's what's happened in multiple events, and being a corrupt creature due to sin, that does happen, sadly. Now, there are still some who will rise to the occasion, who will put others before themselves, but they're not the normal.
Right. Yeah. So there was more than one example of that happening where people were getting desperate to save their lives. Well, we were just talking about that one event where this guy is going crazy, and Ray's daughter is being threatened by this guy. You were saying that you're saying that this would be you'd be justified to use life-threatening force on this guy. But what if someone is taking your only chance for survival out of the picture? Like, you're going to go get, let's say it's a vehicle. In this case, it was a car, right? They had a car. They can escape with the car.
Yeah, they made no sense why they were the only ones with cars at that.
That's one reason why I downgraded too, because there were several occasions where there were cars or the EMP that would have been there to wipe out the electronics wasn't in other locations.
They did really good with that EMP. They did really good, because a lot of times with movies, they'll do an EMP and then boom, like 30 seconds later, everything's back on. It's like, no. If you have an EMP, everything's gosh darn fried and you're done. Except they had a camera that was still working, which definitely would have been fried.
Right. Somebody had a camcorder and he was recording the things and he came up to it. Yeah.
That wouldn't have worked.
Not consistent.
There are some things that wouldn't have worked, which definitely I took a point off for that, because it's like so close to actually being good. And I would have actually given probably 2 points if they would have got the EMPs actually right for once.
Well, they got it right, but they weren't consistent.
They got it right, but they weren't consistent all the time. And that's what I would need to see, is a consistent level of this, not just the lights turn off for 5 minutes, turn back on, or, oh, look, I can start using these things again. I mean, if you had it in a Faraday cage, then I guess it would have been fine. But
so I have a viewer comments here. This was concerning, I believe it's the actress that we were talking about, Dakota Fanning, who played the daughter, Rachel Ferrier, in the movie. I'm not familiar with this one, but Nicodemus Serpico said what they did with her in the movie Hound Dog, scarring.
I don't know what
was scarring. I'm not familiar with that.
I probably won't watch it now either.
Yeah, I guess if it's that bad, it's like, yeah, but you do questions like you have a child like this screaming. She looked like she was terrified. You almost have to the question, was she acting or was she actually really terrified of something?
Well, she's good acting and scared. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the other themes that I saw on this here too was, I think there's several here that you could pull out. One of them was what we talked about earlier, Ray's journey as a prodigal son. We saw him come out of being a bad father, and then at the end of the movie, caring for his kids enough to lay down his life for them. And so that was a 180-degree turn, because he was very selfish at the beginning. He didn't want to have pretty much anything. And his son nailed him on it. He says, Dad, you're just selfish. You just don't want to have anything to do with this. And he was right. So there was that aspect that had happened, building up character. So that part was good to see.
think another shortcoming was establishing the normal. They really didn't do that with him. Like, what was his... I mean, it was clear that he didn't really care for his kids to be there. He was basically a deadbeat dad. But what was his driving... What did he want in life?
Well, he loved cars, right? And when his son took his car without permission and didn't even have a driver's license or insurance, he actually didn't blow up at him as much as I would have thought he would have.
Well, the whole lightning thing kind of superseded
the destruction of the world just kind of does put things in perspective.
Okay, stealing car, really bad. world-ending event that might threaten all of humanity. Okay, that's a little bit on a higher
He
scale.
did tell him next time, don't do that or I'm going to call the cops on you. So he is thinking of the future.
Well, and
he doesn't think it's going to be world ending.
That's not really bad parenting either, since he doesn't have a driver's license.
That's true. All right. So then Nicodemus replies, says, yes, do not watch it. And we're talking, let me go back to this. We're talking.
What, the Hound Dog?
Hound Dog right here. Yes. Yeah. Hound Dog.
Okay.
That
no movie. Watching Hound Dog.
No watching Hound Dog. And then Thomas said, you need a car built in the 60s is just mechanical. And that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you had, and his was more or less, now the solenoid, I think maybe the solenoid, depends on how, with an EMP, you basically have this pulse, this electromagnetic pulse that's strong enough that you can have serious arcing. For sensitive microelectronics, they can fry the electronics. You actually get burning out of components, physically burning them out. Maybe even some other, depending on how strong that is, you can have anything else that uses electricity or metal can actually arc and fuse that as well. So it depends. In the movie, they did mention a solenoid had gone out. He did talk to the mechanic about that, said check your solenoid. And he did. So yeah, that's a good point. So older cars, older muscle cars, let's hear it for that. So one of the themes that you could look at, and I'm open to hearing any other themes that you guys can pull out here too, Ray's journey as a prodigal son. There was really not a whole lot outstanding in this movie. We've reviewed some other movies and said, wow, there's something really potent right there that just jumps out.
Yeah, this again,
it's a survival.
It's just survival. Just get there. I did like the fact that they did deal with hard questions on when the rubber meets the road. How are you going to survive?
You mean like your ethics? What would you do in certain?
I mean, like you have the son who's trying to run off, and you have your daughter there who's relying on you, who's being pulled away by strangers, not because the strangers are wanting ill of the child, but thinking that basically the parents must have died or something, and this kid's left here all alone, and she's going to stand here and die if we don't do anything. Yep. So I mean, the people are being good Samaritans, but you have to make those sort of decisions. Which one are you going to protect? Who are you going to guard? Then the whole thing with the nuts dude in the basement. It's like
the nuts dude.
Whenever you're hiding from the aliens and they are like right outside, and this dude is making noise. He is crazy. He is nuts. He is not going to listen to any logic or sense. What are you willing to do to save your family?
You know what? In hindsight, looking at that, because that was not the last time they had aliens come down into the basement. There was encounters after that, and he would have, I believe, even after that. Wasn't there another encounter after?
There was another encounter after that.
So he probably would have made them vulnerable.
Yeah,
and that was the case. But that happened anyway, right? Because his daughter goes out the door
anyway. Yes, the daughter did stupid things.
Yeah. There was, and there were some other inconsistencies.
Now, granted, kids aren't always the smartest.
No,
to be honest with you.
No.
So there is that aspect. It's annoying, but there is that aspect.
So there's another theme that I wanted to bring up, and I think this is probably the most potent one that's here, and that is human vulnerability and divine protection. Usually, when you watch a movie, especially if it's a thriller or something along those lines, like this, I almost class this would be sci-fi, maybe verging on horror with some of the conditions that are going on there. You would see a fight for survival, but I think this takes it a little bit over the top because this is all of the human race, and it took us to a very low extent, probably just very much like Independence Day with the destruction of the earth being like it was, and maybe even a step further because we're seeing ecological changes here with these like blood roots that are going around. I don't know what else you call them. But the humans in the film are depicted as extremely vulnerable against the technology of the superior aliens, emphasizing our fragility. And there's a Christian theme here. This vulnerability is a reminder of our dependence and protection from God. We are in a very possibly hostile environments. And even if we are the only sentient species in the universe, which I don't think we are because there are angels, but even if we are the only sentient species in the universe itself is extremely hostile environment outside the Earth. So it's interesting, though, that in this case, God's provision was the microorganisms that live around us on a daily basis, and that's just not me projecting any kind of Christianity on. That was in the original book.
That was very specifically.
Yeah. So
radio broadcast and this movie.
It does mention it too. That's what it does mention God in the introduction and then the outro as well. So these are things that I think is really strong theme that if you're sitting down with somebody, they're not a believer, you're watching this movie together, you can even, I think, pose that as a question to them, saying, how vulnerable are we as a species? What would it take? If you're an atheist, this is it. This is the if not the end of the humanity, it's probably soon. Maybe the human race lasts as long as the end of the universe. Okay, congratulations. Then what? Eventually, nothing. There's not going to be even the smallest imprint that the entire human race has made, because everything we have, from the pyramids to the footprints on the moon to everything, is going to be erased from existence. So we do have okay, so there's a couple of comments here I want to bring up. Thomas Hall said, "Not my idea. I forgot who I got it from. There are two kinds of stories. Those like Lord of the Rings, where the character, where who the character is defines what they do, and stories where characters merely react to what is done to them. Seeing a lot of that lately." Yeah, this was an example of this kind of situation. I think that's, and if you're just joining us a little bit later, that was one of the reasons why you had downgraded
such
this,
a
right?
low score, is because it feels like it's passive. It's not clear what is going on with the characters. They don't feel like they gain any ground. They feel like they're always just.
Now, I disagree with that a bit. I think there's a place for this kind of story because the changes that they make are more personal and inward. And this was, most of the people involved in all these stories, even Independence Day, they are this type of person. They are the observer here. Correct?
No, I say in Independence Day, they participated a lot.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Unlike Independence Day, most people that were in that movie, I'm not talking about the main characters. I'm talking about everybody else on the earth.
Everyone else on the earth, sure. But again, that's why we follow the main characters.
Yeah, I would agree. Even if example of like the Lord of the Rings, if you followed some Hobbit and Bree during the whole movie and saying, "Oh, I hear about goings on out east," and fall of Mordor, and all he sees is maybe a poof of smoke over the horizon, it'd be pretty boring.
Wow, that sucks. That was a waste of time.
Yes. All right, so here's a question from Nicodemus. He says, "My only question is, if colonial Christians are bad, then what are liberals which colonize Mars?" Okay. I guess this is more of a political question, which I try to stay away from. But yeah, if we colonize Mars, is that necessarily a bad thing? If colonization is inherently evil, which I don't believe it is. But if
a joke,
yeah, there's nobody on Mars.
Said it was a joke.
Okay. I'm sorry, sir. I'm taking you so seriously here.
Take it way too literal.
It is. I am taking it way too literally. So these are a couple of the themes that would be could be brought out. You could probably dig up a couple more, but this particular movie I don't think was as rich in possibilities, like you say, probably because of the passive
Well,
nature.
here's another aspect of these sort of this movie, and even his question there, flipping it around. Because if we were colonizing another planet and there weren't any what we would consider sentient beings there, and we just changed the world to match our needs. If we flip that around and took a look from the aliens' perspective coming here, if they had a higher requirement for being considered sentient, are they necessarily evil for trying to colonize this planet?
Boy, that sounds vaguely familiar. I think there is something that may deal with that. I don't know. Maybe.
So even
maybe
though
not.
Nicodemus used it as a joke, and rightfully so,
And it went right over my head.
Went right over his head. Because I'm not going to take the blame.
It touched down. I think it made a scraping landing on yours. But go ahead.
That being said, there's a parallel. If they're just microbes there and we terraform that planet, if they are looking at us like we're microbes and they terraform Earth, are they really bad guys? Do they intend our destruction? Yes. But do they see it as wiping out another sentient being?
Yes. Yeah. I see what you're going with this. And
that's just an interesting question for a sci-fi book. Maybe
I can't imagine anything that would be dealing with that at all. Thank you for the plug.
On your own stream.
Okay, so when you get down to it, we're a vulnerable and fragile species. This universe is beautiful, but harsh at times, unforgiving. We live in a protective cocoon called Earth, stray a little bit from its thin biosphere, and the universe has no mercy on us. So it is with God's will for us. We're designed for a purpose. And if we stray from that, we make ourselves vulnerable to the harsh reality outside his grace. We will end with the closing thoughts from the film, narrated by Morgan Freeman. And it reads, and I believe this might actually be from the book itself. They were undone, speaking of the aliens, destroyed after all humanity's weapons and devices had failed, by the tiniest of creatures that God, in his wisdom, put upon this earth. By the toll of 1 billion deaths, we have earned our immunity to our right to survive among this planet's infinite organisms. And that right is ours against all challengers. For neither do we live nor die in vain. Coming up on Thursday morning, we're going to take a look at Born with a Desire. If I have certain desires or proclivities, does that mean it's a justification for behavior? And then next Tuesday night, we're going to take a look at Firefly and have a guest on, another science fiction author named Ryan, who's going to be looking at us with one of his favorites, Firefly. I don't know if you got a chance to see that or not, but we're going to take a close look at it. It's an old one, but a fan favorite. So until then, appreciate the input that we got tonight, and we will see you next time.